Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Anyada Buena. Good Yantif. A good new year. I want to dedicate my teaching tonight to my many mentors over the years. In chronological order, my mom, Mary Lou Johnson of blessed memory, my queer uncles, Charles Stanley and Bill Livingston of blessed memory, my beloved junior high English teacher, Bonnie Kahn Martin, Rabbi Yoel Kahn, Rabbi Jane Littman, Dr. Nan Geffen, Dr. Avram Davis, Rabbi Gershon Winkler, Dr. Ron Riesberg, Rabbi Bert Jacobson, Rabbi B'nai Lappi, Dr. Nomi Seidman, Dr. Dina Aronoff, Rabbi Dev Noily, and Haravia Hagdola Rachel Brody. Without these guides along the way, I would have never learned what I've needed to learn. I would have never been steered back into my lane. I would have never come to be able to do the work that I do. And I'm eternally grateful to each and every one of them for everything they have given me. Okay, let's just take a nice deep breath. All right. Welcome. Whoever you are, wherever you are welcome here. Even though we are gathered in this virtual, weird form that we're in, separated spatially, we are connected spiritually. We are together in essence, if not in presence, scattered in body, but united in purpose to communally celebrate and grieve the passing of another year. What will it take for us to let go of this year, defined by the millions of lives lost to COVID, war, weather, famine, poverty, racism, phobia, and the legally sanctioned lethal combination of mental illness and guns? The stress and danger has left us tired and anxious, unsettled, and frustrated. Jewish wisdom encourages us to set this moment aside, to catch our breath and to reflect, to acknowledge that we are here, that we made it this far. It reminds us that our breath and beating heart are proof enough that we are blessed, having been written once more into the book of life. Tonight, in community, this tradition invites us to grapple with our established ways of acting, thinking, and feeling, shedding those habits that no longer serve us to make room for wild possibilities of an unrecognizable future. And that is a daunting task, to put it mildly. In addition to our individual challenges, humanity as a whole is at a tipping point right now. We are nearly 2 years into this pandemic while climate change wreaks havoc around the globe. Financial inequity is undeniable, and social friction is tearing us apart. These are draining and frustrating days, and to be honest, I find it a little hard to be excited about the future. A few weeks ago, I admitted to my friend and colleague, the fabulous Mr. David Green, that I felt more adrift and overwhelmed than ever trying to figure out what I was going to say to y'all tonight. Look, Jhos, he said, I'm sure every rabbi every year struggles to know what to say on the high holy days. But here's the thing. As a congregant, this year, I don't even know what I want to hear. So I lumbered on, and then Afghanistan went into a tailspin, and Hurricane Ida ripped into Louisiana and deluged New Jersey, and the guzzling triple threat of crypto banking made it to the front page. And with each headline, my mind froze and my heart hardened. What could I possibly have to say that would lighten the load for you so that we can move even slightly forward? So I meditated and I studied. And in my meditation, this soundbite from the Rosh HaShanah liturgy kept rising and not floating away. 3 words, Hayom Harat Olam. Hayom, today, now, the day. Harat, to conceive, to be in a pregnant state, heavy or expectant. Olam, ancient, antiquity, eternity, forever, perpetual, world. So if you take that little kaleidoscope and turn it a few times, you're going to come up with a whole bunch of meanings. So I went on a little Hebrew road trip. More often than not, Hayom Harat Olam is translated by the blithe quip, "Today is the birthday of the world," and is used to frame Rosh HaShanah as a celebration of creation, with shofarot party horns and sweet challah and apples dripping with honey, and everything is new and fresh and exciting. It's very, very upbeat. So I was like, why did that bubble up? Come on. Subconscious, what are you up to? A birthday party? Really? Now? I don't think so. Yeah, like a birthday party that takes place in a rehab center or in a cancer ward or in a prison maybe. I mean, there's hope in those places, but it's a little shaky, and there's a lot of hard work ahead. I'm all for celebrating creation, but not without accepting responsibility for all of the damage that we have wrought. This year, there is no getting around the fact that this moment in history is a crisis point. And so, who better to consult than the early rabbis who in 70 Common Era watched the destruction of the Second Temple, the nexus of Jewish culture at that time? It isn't certain when the notion of Hayom Harat Olam came into the liturgy, but it is ancient, and some attribute it to those radical, fringy, alternative folks we now call rabbis. It's actually the first line of a short piyut, a prayer song poem from the Rosh HaShanah afternoon liturgy. It goes like this: Hayom Harat Olam, today the world is expectant. Today all the beings of the cosmos will stand before you to be judged as children or as servants. If as children, be merciful with us, like a parent is merciful with their children. If as servants, then our eyes will hang on you until you are gracious with us and bring forth illuminating judgment like holy light. It's a supplication, a cry for mercy, for clarity, for grace. Mournful, hopeful, fraught, courageous, resigned, resilient. It is a plea that is ancient and eternal. The world is full of mystery. We don't know what's going on. Be merciful with us. We don't know what to do. Be gracious with us. Show us the way. It lifts our insecurity as an offering on the altar. The insecurity, uncertainty, and anxiety is so familiar and immediate right now. And it's strangely comforting, for me at least, to know that our forebears left us some tools for navigating terrible times. And so did their forebears before them. The notion of Harat Olam, a turgid or pregnant world, comes from the reluctant prophet Jeremiah, who lived during an even earlier and even more unsettled and fractious, corrupt and violent time. His life bridged the destruction of the first temple in 586 before Common Era, which, having been given the onerous gift of prophecy, he knew was going to happen. Jeremiah described God's word as an inner fire that compelled him to call out the immorality, graft, and corruption of the temple leadership, who not only failed to inspire the people to turn away from their debauchery and vice and blasphemy, such as child sacrifice, like that kind of blasphemy, but they even egged them on. Jeremiah knew that it was going to take a radical course correction to avert the threat of epic disaster. And he also knew that it was probably too late for that shift. Unlike the other prophets before him, who had also cried and cajoled and coaxed the powers that be to stay upright, only to have their warnings go unheeded, Jeremiah knew that the big crash was going to happen on his watch. and he was despondent. Nevertheless, he kept warning, he kept chiding, hoping against hope for an 11th hour reprieve. In response to his scathing critiques and dire warnings against the temple leadership, Jeremiah was apprehended by Paschur, one of the temple leaders, who had him flogged and put into stocks for 24 hours. When he was released, Jeremiah could not contain himself. He called Paschur a terrorist. He continued his rant against the priests, pointedly repeating that they were responsible for the ensuing devastation. He ended by saying, "And you, Paschur, and all who dwell in your house, you will go into captivity. You will come into Babylon, where you will die and be buried along with all of your loved ones, to whom you lied and promoted falsehood." Fearing more reprisal, Jeremiah instantly regrets his outburst and says, "God's word was burning like a fire in my heart, stored in my bones, and though I struggled to contain it, I could not." And in a complete misery, he cries out, "Cursed was the day that I was born. Don't let the day be blessed when my mother bore me. Cursed is the person who brought my father the news and said, 'A boy is born to you,' and gave him such joy. Let that man be like a destroyed city. Let him suffer because he did not kill me before my birth, so that my mother might become my grave. V'rachma harat olam, and her womb remains swollen forever." Poor Jeremiah. How terrible to see the destruction around him and the destruction to come, and to feel utterly powerless to affect it. He was so alone with all that pain that his agonizing wish was to have never left the womb. I hear that. I hear in his despair a yearning for innocence, to have only dwelled in the bespoke world of the womb, to be the center of a universe that was built just for you, snug and safe and untroubled by this world, forever. To be in that place forever, buffered from the terrible cruelty of humanity, but also locked away from kisses and kindness and humor and heroism. I understand his despair, and I wonder why that womb experience feels so remote now. What kind of awareness was possible in that sacred chamber? And I wonder if, as my body was being crafted in that ghostly realm, I wonder if some sense of wholeness was planted in my consciousness. And why, if our womb was so perfect, do we not have a better handle on how to make this world more like that womb? But whatever is happening, whatever was going on in there, each and every one of us was pushed or hauled out of that vessel, flung into this life, sputtering, wailing, and flailing. We arrived slightly unfinished, with no defenses, completely vulnerable, and miraculously, our needs were met by others. Someone chose to care for each and every one of us here. Maybe ineptly, maybe for all the wrong reasons, or maybe expertly and driven by love. But however it got done, we were tended. We were tended well enough to have survived. And somehow, here we are in this broken and beautiful world, and we have found our way here to this gathering tonight to rejoice and grieve, to tremble and dance. We are here, my friends, to care for and be cared for by each other. We are here to care for and be cared for by each other. That is what drove Jeremiah into his rage. He could see that all the pain and suffering, all the loss and trouble was because people stopped caring for each other. They didn't care about the earth. They were preoccupied with attaining power, and they lost their connection to the divine. And this left Jeremiah very alone, because he could sense, and he could feel, and he could see the divine in everything. According to the Renaissance commentator Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, part of a prophet's function may include being sent on a mission by God. But this in itself is not the essence of prophecy, nor is it necessary that a prophet be sent on a mission to others. The essence of prophecy is that one be attached to their source and through it experience revelation. The Talmud asserts that there were hundreds of thousands of prophets in their era. People who opened their minds and their spirits, their bodies and their hearts to what today we loosely call spirituality. These folks offered themselves to their communities as artists and healers, scholars and teachers, musicians and dancers. They were ordinary people who understood that their actions, their words, and their presence mattered. They saw that spirit was the driving force of the universe, not money or political power, not status or conquest, just the pursuit of love and compassion and joy and delight and curiosity and reverence and justice and understanding. That is what would generate a womb of peace. I take comfort in hearing from those prophets. They watched their world burn and crumble too. They felt powerless in the face of crisis that tumbled towards them, one after the other. And it is because of their faith in each other and their students, and their students, and in their children, and their children's children, and their students' children, and their children's students, creating a tangled and brilliant web of connection that has strung its way all the way to us. It's because of that. It's because of them. It's because of that caring, even in tumultuous and broken times, that we are here tonight, a congregation of prophets, to celebrate and contemplate this ever unfolding life together. Anew by Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt. Here's the thing. The year begins anew, even in the worst of times. The leaves will turn and fall, and then they'll grow again. And sometimes we're afraid, and we can't know what choice to make to keep anyone safe. Uncertainty is a bear. All we can do is seek out sweetness everywhere we may, and work to fix what brokenness we find. And the good news is that we're not in it alone. We'll help each other hope when the light seems dim, and lift the sparks that darker days reveal. We'll love each other fiercely. In the end, there's no greater work that we can do. We who survive will help heal each other.